What you need to know to be successful while using Agile in your projects. My name is Guilherme and I'm a project management specialist. I help professionals to become successful project managers. Well, the topic I'm going to discuss here today is one that's a trend everywhere. Very likely you heard about agile project management, and how the companies they want to be agile. What I want to explain to you here, it's one of the foundations so you understand this entire agile discussion, and it's one of the foundations that you need to build on to be able to implement agile in any project in a successful way. And why this is so important? Because a lot of times people mix up or they misunderstand what's agile. They mix up agile with Scrum, and they think agile means having daily meetings, and it's in reality that's nothing to do with agile. And let me then I want to give you a full overview about agile, but also explain to you how it works and build some foundations there. So if you look here into my screen, you have this picture here that's I'm highlighting. That's basically an image that I took off from the PO Box 6th edition. There you see a big universe called Lean. Then you see a smaller universe called Agile. Why, first of all, this is an important to understand? Because also I've seen a lot of people arguing that Agile it's not related with Lean anyhow. Well, first of all, the two most used agile frameworks they are Scrum and Kanban. And Scrum itself it comes from it is written down the Scrum guide that's written by the Scrum the people that created Scrum. That Scrum is based on the empirical process or the empirical theory, empirical knowledge, and lean philosophy. So then here you already see the lean reference there. But also Kanban like the Kanban method, it was developed on the basically on the Kanban itself. Basically, Kanban means cards that you can see that started at Toyota with as one of the tools for lean production, or it was one of the tools in the Toyota production system. And why I'm saying that, I'm not saying that the Kanban methodology and also Scrum, they did not evolve, they did not have extra value that you also can, that you, some details that you are not going to be able to find on Lean. But this is very important because if you do not understand this Lean philosophy and this Lean background there's a big chance that you might end up misunderstanding Kanban, and you end up misunderstanding Agile and even Scrum. So that is a very important point to start on to build your knowledge. So now you understand that then you have a big universe called Lean and you have a smaller universe called Agile. And inside of this universe called Agile, you have several different frameworks. Then you have, as you can see here, Scrum, you have Kanban, you have Crystal, you have XP, and we have Scrumban, and you can have Lean software and all other different types of framework. What's important to you to understand, because a lot of times people, when they hear Agile, they think that's exactly the same thing as Scrum, that it's not. So Agile, it started with this universe approach, this project management approach that started based on the Agile Manifesto. But Agile is not equivalent to Scrum. So you have this big universe called Agile that was started with this approach that started with Agile Manifesto. Then you have all those types of Agile frameworks that can be executed in projects. So Scrum and Agile, it's not the same thing. That's why you see Scrum as part of the Agile universe, but it's not exactly the same thing. But then you also see there the Kanban, and that's one of the reasons why you see the Kanban inside of the Agile universe, but also outside the Agile universe. Kanban started with the Toyota production systems as one of its tools, and it was developed as Kanban methodology, then focusing on project management. And then, of course, this is included in the Agile universe. And then, of course, you also have those different types of frameworks. Here we just see a few of them, but probably you have dozens of them nowadays. Kanban and Scrum, they are the most used ones. So it's very important that you understand, in general, this distinction. And that's this picture here, I think, gives a very nice overview. And that's why I took it in to explain. So what's Lean? Let's talk a bit. What's Lean? Well, basically, Lean origin is the Toyota production system in Japan. From when I mean Toyota production system, it's really Toyota, the company that you are thinking about, the car company. So in general, the aim of Lean is to produce faster and cheaper delivery products and services without sacrificing quality. How they are going to do that? One of the ways the way focus to do that is reduce waste, focus on value, and then of course the pillars of Lean or the Lean philosophy. It's continuous improvement. Then you're going to hear about Kaizen and respect for people. Something important to understand: every time you talk about Lean manufacturing, Lean management, this is equal to the Toyota production system. So after the Second World War, Toyota, they had several constraints there, and one of their constraints that they had there was the resource constraint, both capital but also human resource and equipment and everything else. So they start to develop a way how they could deliver more with higher quality for their suppliers. That was in general one of their constraints. And of course, what they did at Toyota, they built on a series of things like Fordism and other items from quality. So everything started after the Second World War. And they started to develop tools to make sure that they could produce better cars and they could develop their manufacturing system there. Something that's very important, then, if you understand that Lean and Toyota production system, they are equivalent, because sometimes I mention Lean and sometimes I talk about tools of the Toyota production system. That's very important that you understand that they are synonyms when I'm putting in this scenario here. Of course, you might have heard about Lean Six Sigma. Lean Six Sigma is basically Lean from Toyota with Six Sigma developed by Motorola, but that's a different type of discussion. For now, I want to talk about Lean, and when you talk about Lean, you can think about Toyota production system. So what's so different? Because then Toyota starts to do that, and they start to perform very well, and that model starts to spread around the world. Then people will not call, instead of calling Toyota production system, they start to call it Lean. So what is so unique about this system? Let me just give you an idea what's the Toyota production system. Toyota, the Toyota way, how they call it, is based on the 4 P's: philosophy, people and partners. Okay, I know that's 2 P's, but they are, for some reason, they put it together. Process and problem solving. So you see there that the Toyota way, it includes much more items. Of course, when this starts to spread, process, it's a bit easier, something easier to copy. Problem solving, it's a skill that of course you can develop. But your people and your partners and your philosophy, that's something that gets much more difficult to be copied there. Then let me talk about the Toyota purpose definition and why this is important, because this is fully connected with the Toyota philosophy. And that's one of the items that made the Toyota production system so hard to copy, because like all the American car manufacturers like Ford, General Motors, they try to copy this Toyota production system, or they try to copy and implement Lean, but they always had a hard time with the philosophy and with the people part, and even with the partners part. So copy, even though if they copy the process, they copy some of these tools, they copied also the methodologies for problem solving, but they could not copy the philosophy. And this philosophy is highly connected with this Toyota purpose definition here. That's why I have it here, and that's why I want to explain to you. So basically on the Toyota purpose definition, They look at this in business and people, so they look at the two dimensions inside and outside of the company. So when they are looking into that, uh, people inside of the company, then they understand that always to a company to be sustainable, you always need to take care of the short term because that's the result that you have nowadays. But you always need to keep in mind that you have a long term view. Why this is long term? It's important because a lot of times you see companies they are sacrificing their long-term view for their short-term view. So that's something that you clearly you do not see in the Toyota purpose definition. Why? Because the long term it's one of the most important items, and that's how they develop and how they drive the entire philosophy and the entire culture of the company. So when they talk about people, what they need to have in the short term, it's basically they need to have capable people, of course, to the world today. And what's their long-term goal there? Is to make sure that they can have this continuous improvement culture there. That's the Kaizen culture. That they are going to build a learning community out there. And when they talk about people, but outside of the company, basically they are looking at their partners. Then what they need, short-term capable partners that they can deliver parts and services that they need to execute the work there. But also they are looking to build partners or partnerships with other companies that they can have this continuous improvement, and they also get to this learning, this type of learning company that they can develop the learning community that they can build a long-term relationship. And then when you look for business, of course, you have the lean systems, short-term capable processes, because without capable processes, they cannot execute, they cannot produce anything. But in the long term, what they're looking for the value flow there. See, I'm going to explain also what's the value definition from Toyota perspective. But keep in mind that they are always looking for value flow there. And then the business outside, what they're looking there for the value added, meaning that in the short term it's profitability, because if the companies are not profitable, they are not sustainable. So if a company is not profitable, it's not going to be sustainable in the long run. But they also, for the long term, they want to make sure that they can grow and the company can develop, and also they can contribute for the society. I know when I say that it might sound even sometimes naive, but how does a company contribute to society? Well, a company can pay taxes, a company generate jobs, a company can generate value, can help to protect the environment, can drive, can make sure that to help to develop the right culture in a community. So a company has a very important impact to develop a community in the right way. But why I'm explaining all that about the Toyota production system? Because the philosophy that you're going to see here, this is completely connected with what you have in the Agile Manifesto. And the Agile Manifesto is the entire base of this word called the Agile approach, and now for all those types of different frameworks that you're going to see there. Something that's very important, because I mentioned here value flow and value added. And I already kind of mentioned this when I talk about reducing waste. That's one of the reasons, one of the focus from the Toyota production system, saying that you're going to focus on value, meaning that you identify what's value and everything else you try to reduce, because everything else you are going to see as a waste. So what is value in Lean, or what's value in the production system? Basically, value added activity, as they see that those are activities that transform a form or function of a service or product, that the customer must be willing to pay for that, and that's done right at the first time. And anything that cannot fit those standards here or those definitions, they are considered non-value added activities. So you can see that a lot of those things there that companies they do and they might do it, they're considering in this perspective as a waste. That's why you always see the purpose definition of Toyota. When they talk about the long term, they talk about value flow. So you are going to identify what you are valuing and you try to maximize your value and reduce your waste. Something that's very essential here, customer defines what's value. So under that perspective, let's take a look here on the Agile Manifesto. So if you look at the Agile Manifesto, for a start, there that you see individual interactions over process and tools. Here again, if you read the Agile Manifesto, they do not say, the intent is not saying that process and tools they are not important, but the intent is saying that individuals' interactions they are more important. So here you already have this idea here, what I mentioned, respect for people, and then you can look for the purpose again, thinking about people development, learning community. Then the learning community is for problem solving, focusing how you can grow, not blaming people for mistakes, empowering people, all those type of things there. It's embedded in this Toyota purpose definition, this lean philosophy there. So that's the first thing that you see in the Agile Manifesto. When they are talking about individuals and interactions, they are talking about empower your team, making sure that your team is being valued. And of course, if you look also on the principles of the Agile Manifesto, you're going to see there that items, for example, making sure that you have a sustainable piece and this kind of stuff. Everything is involved here with the respect for people. Then you have the second item there in the Agile Manifesto that you're going to see it's work and software over comprehensive documentation. Well, the Agile Manifesto started with IT because there was this group they were trying to execute, or a lot of people they were trying to execute IT projects, and they had an insatisfaction the way those projects were being executed, trying to follow like a waterfall or a traditional approach where you try to plan a lot up front, even though you have a lot of uncertainties and a lot of unclarities on requirements level, and there was a lot of focus on documenting something, but in the end that will take a long time to a customer to take a look on a software, to have a demo or something like that. So you can see that work then what the value for software development is for a customer in the end. The value itself is the software, and the software is working. So you see here in the Agile Manifesto, when they are talking about working software, you can understand that as value delivery. And then here again, you see the idea and over comprehensive documentation. Again, not that documentation is not important, that only you should focus more on value than documentation. And value under this object, you are looking what's value for the customer. Value for the customer is working software. So that's why you're focusing on working software. That's the value that the customer wants. If you can have all the documentation updated in your project, but if in the end the customer does not see the value, your project is going to fail. If your main stakeholders they do not see the value there, then sometimes can be the value can be financial value, can be customer value, quality of the product, and a lot of different stuff. But this is a very key item here, so you need to understand that. So moving forward here with the Agile Manifesto, what's the other part of the Agile Manifesto? Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And here, when you think about the Toyota definition, you see that you're not talking about suppliers or customer relationships in so much contractual ways. You're talking about developing a partnership so you can develop a learning company and a learning community so you can develop those companies can develop themselves in the long term. So that's something that you already see there. And why you see this customer collaboration over contract negotiation? Because, for example, in the old days, if you're not only the old days, because I know that there are companies that are still executing IT projects like that. If you have a fixed price contract there, and things continue to change, and if things are changing, every time means if you have changes on the scope, you also have effect on the time, and you have an effect on your cost. But if the contract is a fixed price and those things are changing, someone needs to pay for that. But if the customer does not want to pay for that, then you enter a lot in a contract negotiation instead of focusing on developing the product. And what's the mindset of the Agile Manifesto, what they want to settle? Is making sure that you are focusing the value for the customer that's all working software, and that you are collaborating with your customer to understand what they really need, because keep in mind that the customer is the one defining what's value. So you can deliver to them value and focus on delivering to value instead of focusing the contract negotiation. And again, not the contract negotiation is not important. And to make sure that the Agile works, one of the requirements that you need to have there, one of the constraints that you need to have there, is making sure that you have the right type of contract, because a fixed price contract in an agile environment will be very tough to keep it, like that. But that's something to keep in mind. And of course, and the last item of the Agile Manifesto, it's responding to change over following a plan. And in which aspect that you are thinking of responding to change? Well, you understand that you are in an uncertain environment, that your requirements cannot be fully clear. So that's why you need to collaborate with your customer, because you're going to learn about the requirements and about the product while you're executing it. So you need to be able to adapt, because if you cannot know everything up front, like if you are planning a house, if you are planning to build a house, it's I would say that's relatively easy that you can define what you want in the house. You say, I want the walls in white, I want to have a room, I don't know, with 20 square meters, I want to have a pool. Those are easier requirements to map. When you are talking about software, it's much more difficult to communicate exactly what you need there. Of course, you have an idea for what you want to use, but sometimes you're going to some features that you're going to understand only after you learn that. Some requirements, that some connections that you're going to make only after you start to use that. So understanding that you always need to be ready to adapt, it's very important. Why? Because responding to change, you're collaborating with your customer and you are focusing in your value. That's in this case for the Agile Manifesto is working software to the customer. So if you understand this basically lean philosophy and lean Toyota production system here, the Toyota purpose definition here, you can understand how this evolved, how the Agile Manifesto evolved from the Toyota production system. And again, why this is relevant? Because every time people tell me that, say, I want to learn Scrum, for example, where do I start? Well, the first thing where you need to start is understanding the Agile Manifesto. And of course, what I'm giving to you here, it's also a better understanding about the Agile Manifesto, because this is the entire foundation what you are doing there. And of course, while you talk about the Agile Manifesto, you also have the Agile Manifesto principles there that are 12 there, that I'm not going to cover here in a lot of details, because then we will need much more time to discuss that. But if you quickly look to them, they are fully aligned, of course, with the Agile Manifesto, but they are fully aligned with the Toyota philosophy, or the Lean philosophy, as you wish, and the Toyota purpose definition there, how a company should operate. And this is key, because there's nowadays, because Agile is a trend, a lot of people start to think, okay, Agile, and then they mix up Agile with Scrum, and because they do not understand either the history of the Agile Manifesto evolving on the Lean philosophy, and then Scrum being also based on the empirical process control and also on Lean philosophy, they start to talk about all those random things and they start to think about Agile. And when they start, for example, trying to implement Scrum, they start saying, okay, let's do daily Scrums or daily stand-ups, if you want to call. And they think if they are doing daily meetings, they start to be Agile. And no, Agile is much more like than the Scrum events by itself, because the value that you get from using Scrum is not exactly the the events that you have there. Of course, I'm talking about specific about Scrum because it makes a bit more concrete when you talk about than talking just about Agile. Because in Scrum, then that you have the 5 events there, and you have the 3 roles, and you have the so these 5 events. I'm not going to talk about all the 5 events, but the value that you're going to get there, if you do the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, if you do the sprint review and the sprint retrospective, but if you do not understand the philosophy and the principles around it, you're not going to be able to harvest the value of Scrum and you're not going to be able to harvest the value of Agile. That's why the philosophy and the understanding of the Agile Manifesto starts to be so key for understanding how to properly implement an Agile initiative. Because the same as like General Motors tried to copy the Toyota production system, but they could not copy the philosophy or the focus they had on people. And they, of course, they could never achieve even results similar to Toyota. You are going to find the same thing that if you are trying to implement Scrum, but if you do not understand the philosophy around it, the values around it, the principles around it, because then you get people that basically they try to use the Scrum events, but they do not do anything else. They do not use the values to develop the team. They do not try to organize a self. They do not work with a self-organized team. They do not do good agile leadership initiatives. Then when I talk about agile initiatives or agile leadership, you can think about, of course, a self-management team, but you can think about how we are going to measure the team performance. You can think about even bonus systems inside of the team. Everything else is connected. But because of the fact, if you do not fully understand this philosophy around it and how those things they are built to work there, you cannot simply make it work. It's like uh, if you are trying to use a tool without understanding why these two exist. For example, if you say I'm going to use a hammer, but you do not understand what's the purpose of our hammer, of using a hammer in a construction site, for example, that makes the tool useless. So keep in mind that in the end, the framework, the way it's designed, it's there, it has value, it's important, but the framework by itself, if you forget, if you take it out the part of the philosophy, the values and the principles, the framework by itself, then it ends up it's only a tool that's not going to help you to deliver the value that you need. So this is quite critical that you understand, and that's why it's so important that you understand the philosophy that I just explained that to you, because everything else that you're going to see in Agile, you're going to see based on that. And you would not believe how many times companies they do not understand, how many times they do not understand what's that, and because Agile is a trend, and everybody wants to say Agile. Then you get all those kind of all weird initiatives, and they are talking about they are Agile, but in the end, they do not value their team. They do not give freedom to the teams to work. They do not let the team self-organize. They blame people that make mistakes. All those kind of things, they go completely against you should thinking about the agile philosophy, the agile system, and everything else. Okay, I hope that you understand the value of the agile philosophy at this point. If you have questions, you can feel free to reach out. Don't forget to like this content here and also to share with other people, so also this content can reach more people and more people can really understand how Agile works and what's the value about Agile, instead of just trying to implement this without understanding what it is. Make sure you follow my YouTube channel for more content, that I'm always releasing more content weekly. But also make sure that you follow me on Instagram, where I'm always sharing short and daily contents, and also the Q&A box is always open there. And if you have questions about project management in general, feel free to reach out. If you are facing challenges with project management, feel free also to reach out. I would love to hear from you. What are your challenges, how you're struggling, and also to better understand how I can support you in your journey there. Thank you and see you soon. Bye.